Hello everyone and welcome to Newegg TV. My name is Paul. Today I'm going to be doing an unboxing and overview of this new motherboard from ASRock. This is the ASRock Z77 OC Formula. So as you can see, this board is designed for overclocking and it's supposed to be very fast, so they put a sports car in the front. For the gritty details, we have some logos over here. This is a Z77 motherboard, so it supports Intel processors. It's an Intel board. It will support Sli Bridge or Ivy Bridge, that's second or third generation core processors from Intel. Chances are you're going to want to do an Ivy Bridge in this one though, unless you happen to have a Sli Bridge lying around that you really want to use. Again, Z77 chipset. Sli and Crossfirex are supported. There are some other details down here on the side I wanted to point out, primarily this one right there, CEB. If you're not familiar with CEB, that's the form factor. You might be familiar with ATX form factor. CEB is a server standard, so make sure if you're buying a case to put this board in that you get a case that's large enough or that supports the CEB form factor. Also, there's all your other gritty details. Since there's lots of info on this board, I'm going to let you pause that and read if you really want to. And I'm going to go on to this inside flap, which has lots of information about all the special features that ASRock has included here. Starting up here with the power design, so they have 12 plus 4-phase power design to deliver power to the CPU, as well as the iGPU and the memory for enhanced overclocking capability, etc. Premium alloy chokes as part of that 12 plus 4-phase power design, reduce up to 70% core loss. You also have multiple filter caps. So these are the capacitors on the board, MFC. They're actually combination caps, so they are a combination of highly conductive MLCC dip cap and POS cap. Helps the system filter noise from high frequency, mid frequency to low frequency noise, delivering enhanced and higher current with the CPU. Combination power of these three capacitors, MFC allows the users to overclock PC rig to extreme levels without worrying about the hardware components. And there's sort of a diagram down there of the impedance, the frequency, and benefits you get from those caps. Also dual stack MOSFETs, so they're using specialty MOSFETs on this board that are kind of double layer MOSFETs compared to traditional discrete MOSFETs. DSM can provide larger die area and lower RDS on, that's resistance, so the power supply for CPV core is more efficient. Digital power delivery as well by way of a chill 8238 silicon. Over here is some information about the connectors, so they have of course the high density power connectors for your main motherboard connector, as well as your 8-pin supplemental power connector. The gold fingers are actually 15 micron gold fingers for both the CPU socket, the 1155 socket, as well as the DRAM slots. And if you're not familiar with how many microns of gold they actually typically use, they're saying most boards only come with 3 to 4, and that is delivering triple performance than usual, according to ASRock. Also twin power cooling, so right here they have a combination air and water cooler for the power delivery and the MOSFETs. They have an 8-layer PCB with 4 times 2-ounce copper, so 8-layer PCB design. They're also including some gelid OC Extreme thermal compound, so you can use that. Again, if you're overclocking, temperature is very important, so they've included some high-quality compound for when you install your processor and your heatsink. Fine-tuning V-controller, that's available in the UEFI to fine-tune the voltage. You also get voltage read points. The V-probe utility that's mentioned down there, we'll come back to it. You get Nick Shee's OC profile. He is the sort of in-house overclocker, professional overclocker at ASRock, and he's basically set up a bunch of different OC profiles. So whether or not you're using a K-series or non-K-series CPU, so like a 3770K or a non, you can use the profiles integrated to automatically set up your overclocking. Also, an interactive UEFI with both images and sounds. I haven't had a chance to try this one out personally because I've never heard a UEFI that actually has audio, so that's pretty cool. You also get Formula Drive, which is an all-in-one software that you can fine-tune the features. You get multiple thermal sensors, and assuming that the little white lights on this are an accurate representation of the board, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different thermal read points scattered across the board. Down here in the lower left, we have some additional detailed specs, sort of similar to what you saw on the side, so you guys can take a look at those if you prefer. You also have the V-probe, so those are onboard voltage read points, rapid OC buttons, so you can use to automatically overclock. You can also turn your Pci Express lanes on and off. There's 3 switches on the board, so that will more easily allow you to install and do so. For instance, if you want to test a single card, 2-way SLI, 3-way SLI, you can just turn the lanes on and off without having to install and reinstall the video cards. Inside the box we have plenty of packaging material, such as lots of closed cell foam to keep the board protected. ASRock's been doing this with their boards lately, I've noticed it's actually zip tied to the foam, which keeps it from sliding around, I guess. We're going to take a look at the accessories first off, and then we'll take a closer look at the board. We'll start with documentation. There appears to be quite a bit of it. Here's a little information on Virtue MVP. If you're not familiar with Sandy Bridge or Ivy Bridge processors, they typically have an integrated GPU. You can use that software to switch back and forth between the iGPU and a discrete video card. If you have that installed in the MVP version, you can actually use that to increase your frame rates and performance in games. Here's some information on the ASRock XFast 555 utilities, so XFast LAN, XFast USB, and XFast RAM for basically RAM disk, faster USB performance, and faster LAN performance. So that's some additional software that's available. Here's your software setup guide for that software, as well as the other software that might be included with the board, with pictures, of course. And then here is your full book there. Look, it's quite thick. Is this all English? No, this is multiple languages, so multilingual guidebook installation there with all the details such as layout of the board, all the components that are included, introduction to installation. There's all the good stuff about the componentry that's installed. Of course, you also get a driver and software disk, so all the software I mentioned just there is on this disk. I recommend going to the ASRock website to download the latest software from them, as well as the latest drivers for all of the hardware that you have installed in your new system. Here is the rest of the accessories, just making sure there's nothing else hidden away in here. Oh, so look, they've given you a nice OC Formula sort of faux velvet pouch here for all of your accessories. That's very plush. Inside here we have, of course, an input-output shield for the back of your case. It's black. It does have sort of a gold highlight line running around the outside of it, so it looks pretty nice. Here are some standoffs for the motherboard, as mentioned, CEB form factor. So if you happen to be installing in a case that doesn't have all the standoff points where you need them, you can pop these on the back of the board. That'll provide a little bit of extra support, although it doesn't secure it to the tray, so bear that in mind. You don't want to overuse those. You do want a case that's at least mostly compatible with CEB, if not 100% compatible. Here are your serial ATA cables. You have a total of 6 of them. They're all black. They all have the metal clasps. They're all serial ATA revision 1, 2, or 3 compatible, and looks like half of them have L-shaped brackets on one end, and the other half are straight plugs on both ends. You get an ASRock special OC Formula case badge right there, so not just the standard ASRock one, they made one special for the OC Formula. Here's your gelid thermal compound, so there you go, you get a nice plunger full of that to install your CPU with, and anything else that needs thermal compound. That should last for quite a few applications. Here's a USB bracket for your PCI slot, and that's sort of goes along with this little guy right here. This is a combo 3.5-inch slot for your front panel on your case, so you can install that right there if you have a 3.5-inch. Ideally, of course, a black case is what this would match best with. That gives you a couple USB 3.0 ports, an internal 20-pin USB 3.0 header, and then I like this one because it also, you don't lose that slot entirely. It's also got a mounting point right there for a 2.5-inch drive, so you can pop an SSD right in there and you don't lose your slot in your case. And then if you don't want to use that on the front panel, you can simply swap that USB 3.0 over to this and give yourself a couple more rear panel USB 3.0 ports. Here's a couple power adapters, just Molex to serial ATA. If you don't have enough serial ATA cables, I find those to come in handy. Usually when I need them, I can't find them. And then I'm guessing this is an Sli bridge. Yes, it is. It is a rigid PCB style Sli bridge. It's got sort of a round PCB, and that's for a two-way Sli configuration. And now we're going to take a closer look at the motherboard, and we're starting off with the back of the motherboard just so you guys can see the PCB. It is a semi-gloss black PCB, blends in very nicely. They've also got some supplemental support along the back here. That is for the twin power cooling assembly that's on the VRMs. Also a couple Phillips head screws right there are keeping your Z77 chipset cooler in place. So you can remove that if you ever have need to without too much trouble. Here on the front we can see it has a primarily black and yellow and gold color scheme, so componentry scattered throughout, of course. And I'm going to start off by pointing out all of the fan headers that are on the board. There is a total of 8. First off, you get a couple 4-pin PWM fan headers. There's a CPU fan header right up here at the top, and another 4-pin PWM fan header down here at the bottom. Also, for 3-pin fan headers, you get a secondary CPU header right there. You get a couple 3-pin fan headers there on the right side of the board, another 3-pin down here on the bottom, and then 2 more 3-pins that are right over here beneath the VRM cooler. One of those is already plugged into the little fan that's on the VRMs, but there's a second 3-pin header right next to it. Next up, we're going to take a close-up look at all of the componentry on the board, and I'll explain to you guys what's what. First off, down here in the bottom right, we have our front panel connectors. So there you can see hard drive LED, power LED, all that good stuff, as well as your LED and speaker headers right above it. So there's all your front panels. Reset and power switch, surface mounted right there. So if you're doing an outside of the box build, you can use those to easily turn the system on and off, which is very nice to have. A couple BIOS chips right there that are installed, and they've actually got the pre-installed BIOS version printed on them. So you can swap those out if it ever becomes, if you're in dire need of a new BIOS. ASRock will usually send you one, but since you have two, you should be able to switch back and forth between them. There's a little jumper right there, and just by switching that, you can switch between the main BIOS and the backup one. Also, you have 3 USB 2.0 headers down here at the bottom, so one right there, another one right here, and then a third one, which is right there. And those will allow you to connect 2 USB ports each, so for front or rear panel USB. There's the aforementioned 3-pin fan header. There's the aforementioned 4-pin fan header. We'll lift the board up a little bit so you guys can read the text. You got a couple infrared headers right there and right there, so you can connect remote controls. There's a couple different standards for that. This right here, actually, you can't really see it very well, but let me tilt the board up. That is a Molex plug. That is SLI or Crossfire power. So if you are adding additional video cards to the board, different video cards have different power requirements. In a lot of builds, you will not need to plug anything in here, but if you don't have enough power going to your PCI Express lanes, you can plug in a Molex plug right there from your power supply and give it enough juice to do the job. You also have a comm header right here, and then you have your audio components. So there's your HD audio for your front panel mic and headphone. Also, you have a little 2-pin HDMI SPDIF header right there. And then a cool little feature here, we mentioned before, this is an 8-layer PCB, and they've actually printed a see-through area right here. So if you can see, there's a 1 right there, there's a 2, 3, 4 going all the way up, and it sort of fades out as the PCB gets thicker. So there's your proof, 8-layer PCB. Next to that, you have your audio chip. There's a Realtek ALC 898 7.1 channel audio chip right there. Supports Blu-ray and THX True Studio. And then we're going to move over to the PCI Express area next. So there's all your PCI Express slots. You'll notice that they're spaced out, and ASRock is intending this board for enthusiast gamers, so probably going to go with either single or 2-card video card configuration. You'd have a couple PCI Express X1 slots right there, so 1 and 2, those little black ones. And then you get full-length slots. So you have a full-length X16 slot right here that's wired up fully for X16. You get a X16 physical slot right here that's wired up for X8. And then finally you get another physical X16 slot that's wired up for X4. Now bear in mind, these are going to have different functionality depending on what CPU you have installed. So if you're going with an older Sli Bridge CPU, you'll get PCI Express Gen 2 compatibility out of these PCI Express slots. If you're going to use a newer Ivy Bridge CPU, then you'll get PCI Express Gen 3 compatibility. And as far as your SLI and CrossfireX support goes, SLI has some requirements from NVIDIA, so you can't actually have 3-way SLI with an X4 connector. So SLI is limited to either a single card, a 2-way SLI configuration, or if you go with a dual GPU video cards like the 690, you can do quad SLI in these 2 slots. CrossfireX has no such limitations on that 3rd slot. So with CrossfireX, you can go 1-way, 2-way, or 3-way, or as previously mentioned, if you go with dual GPU video cards, you can do quad CrossfireX. Oh, I wanted to point out, you get Nick Shee's signature right there. That's his signature. Kind of a fun little feature. Also to the right of that, if you'll notice right there is a little PLX chip. This isn't a Gen 3 chip, it is a Gen 2 chip, and this is simply providing 4 additional PCI Express Gen 2 lanes. And I could not verify 100% how this is wired up, but I would guess that they're running a lot of your peripheral I/O into that chip, and that way it's not going to conflict with your PCI Express lanes for your video cards, which in most high-end gaming situations is what's most important for most people. To the right of that, you have your ASRock logoed heatsink there, and that's for your Z77 chipset, which resides right below it. And that is controlling a variety of things. A lot of stuff is wired through that, but you get all these serial ATA ports right there. You actually have a total of 10 serial ATA ports, and if you see these 2 little chips right there, those are Marvell chips. Marvell SE9172 chips to be specific. There's 2 of them. Each of those is powering 2 of these ports. That gives it some more serial ATA Gen 3. So you get more serial ATA on the board, which is pretty nice. So here on the right side, the black ports there are your SATA Rev 2 3 gigabit per second ports, and those are going straight to the Z77 chipset. You get the 2 yellow ports right here in the middle. Those are SATA Rev 3 6 gigabit per second, also controlled by the Z77 chipset. And then here on the left side, you have 4 more yellow ports, and those are also SATA Rev 3 6 gigabit per second, controlled by the Marvell chips. You have RAID 0, RAID 1 through those, so nice serial ATA I/O there on the right side of the board. Moving up, we have a couple more 3-pin fan connectors. I showed you guys those at the beginning. There's your USB 3.0 front panel connector, 20-pin. So if you can use that with the included accessory, or if your case has that connector, you can plug it in right there. Above that, you have your 24-pin main motherboard power connector. And then above that, you have your V-probe headers right there. So if you have a multimeter, you can use that right there. You get a total of 14 read points, and reads a variety of voltages from the memory and the processor and that sort of thing. Above that, you have rapid OC buttons, so the plus and minus buttons right there you can use to manually dial in overclocks. Right above that are your 1, 2, 3 on-off switches right there, so little dip switches. And that's simply for the 3 yellow PCI Express slots down there that I showed you. You can simply turn those on and off, a little switch. So if you're doing a multi-card configuration, say you have a quad SLI set up and you want to see how good the performance is compared to just a single SLI, like your single 690, you turn off lane 2, and then you can, without having to uninstall the card, you can test just lane 1. That's just an example of how to use that. You also have your Dr. Debug LED right there, so if you're getting your system up and running, you'll have post codes on there. You can read those, compare them to the codes in the manual, and give yourself a better idea of what the problem might be, so you can get your system up and running. Now we have the main show right here. I'm lacking good modifiers. All right, it's late. Anyway, here's your DDR3 slots. You have 4 of them. It's set up for dual channel DDR3 memory. This board supports some pretty crazy overclock speeds. You can actually get up to DDR3 3000 plus speeds overclock. Bear in mind, Intel, with the Ivy Bridge at least, supports officially XMP speeds of up to 1600, but especially with the power delivery on this board, you can really overclock your memory. Z77 and the Ivy Bridge is fantastic for that. The IMC and the Ivy Bridge processors is pretty amazing, so you can hit some really high overclock speeds with some high quality memory. Again, 4 slots, you're going to want to install at least 2 DIMMs, so you make use of that dual channel DDR3, and you get up to 8 gigs per DIMM supported, so you can do up to 32 gigs of memory installed right there. To the left of that, you have your 1155 socket, and that's where your Sandy Bridge or Ivy Bridge processor goes. Surrounding that, you have your your power delivery and voltage regulation hardware, and that's covered by this cooler right here, which is the twin power cooling from ASRock. So first off, well, let me show you guys. You have little water cooling barbs right there, so you pop those off, and you can actually route through your water cooling loop through this cooler. So it's a combo cooler. It will work as an air cooler with the fan that's right down here, or if you're building a water cooling system, you can do your water cooling through there as well and get increased cooling on all of your power delivery. And with increased cooling on power delivery, almost invariably leads to better overclocks, more stability, etc. There's the fan as well. Again, works just fine with air cooling as well as water cooling, so go with the fan if you don't have a water cooling loop set up. Finally, above that, you have your supplemental CPU power connector. So you actually have an 8-pin plus a 4-pin, and that's, again, really good power delivery on this board for overclocking. So if you are going to be overclocking, make sure you plug in both of those. A lot of higher-end power supplies will have at least the 8-pin, if not an 8-pin plus a 4-pin, or an 8-pin plus another 8-pin. So plug those in right there. Make sure you get all the power you needed to your motherboard. All right. Finishing off with rear panel I/O. For starters, we have a combo PS2 port right there, so mouse or keyboard, you can plug that in. Look at all the USB 3.0. They've added some more apart from what is, you get 2 ports from the Z77 chipset. They've added on a few more, so you get 2, 4, 6 USB 3.0 ports there on the back. We also have a surface or an exterior clear CMOS button, which is very handy. You get an HDMI out right there, and that's because Sandy Bridge and Ivy Bridge processors do have an integrated GPU, and that's your video out for that. Here is your LAN, so you have a gigabit Broadcom BCM 57781 LAN port right there. 4 more USB 2.0 ports, and then finally your Realtek audio analog outs right here, so 7.1 channel audio outs as well as your mic in, and then finally an optical Toslink digital audio out. And that's going to wrap it up for this video, guys. Once again, this has been the ASRock Z77 OC Formula Motherboard. I'm Paul with Newegg TV. If you enjoyed today's video, you can head over to our Newegg YouTube channel, and of course, don't forget to subscribe for more tech videos. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you next time.